Howdy all, grab yourselves a beer. It is time for some Path of Exile, and today I wanted to go through the loot filter that I'm using, how I've set it up, how I've created it, and some of the decisions that I've made. If you want to just download and use the same filter that I do, I'll provide a link to that below, but it is worth knowing a bit about what you're getting yourself into as well. Everything that I do starts with the site filterblade.xyz. Neversink, who's a very well-known Path of Exile player, and also is a computer developer on the side, has put together this website which is phenomenal for basically both having a starting point for loot filters and then also having a large degree of customization. So what you can do is you can pick a strictness level. If you just want to go with a basic setup for, you don't want to go too in-depth, you're willing to trust the decisions that Neversink has made, you can come to this site and you can choose between soft, regular, semi-strict, strict, very strict, uber strict, and uber plus strict. Now, I actually believe that these, the more strict it is, the more zealously it culls items. So, for instance, if you're playing on very strict, you will see only about a quarter of the items that you would see on semi-strict, for instance. And I think generally each tier that you go up, it tries to cull off about the worst half of the items that are visible. So you'll find at one point it'll stop showing portal scrolls and wisdom scrolls, and then at another tier it'll stop showing armorers, scraps, blacksmiths, whetstones. Then another stop will stop showing glassblowers, baubles, and then ultimately, if you go to Uber Plus Strict, you will see no currency orbs that are lower than an orb of alchemy. Everything lower than an alchemy will be hidden, and the idea behind that is that the faster that you can, once you reach a certain point in play, that you can just clear maps at a lightning speed, then you want to spend the minimum time possible picking up loot and only pick up things with the potential to be great. I generally start a league on strict or semi-strict, but make a couple of modifications so that specific 4-link colours I care about while I'm leveling show up. Once I get to endgame and I've got myself a couple of dozen, a few dozen maps established, I will then usually start with either Uber Strict or Uber Strict Plus. If I'm playing a Magic Find build, then I would definitely go Uber Strict Plus. But if you're playing a build that doesn't fit a large amount of Magic Find equipment, then Uber Strict is probably the starting point to use. I'll then go through the customizations that I make to this. So Uber Strict by default shows it only shows in terms of vendor recipes, it only shows quality gems that are 14% or higher, and I'm happy with that. So the idea being that you're happy to pick up a third of a gem cutter's prism, but you're not going to bother with anything that's less than a third. By all means, feel free to overwrite that if you prefer to have all the lower quality gems. I find that this works. The one change that I make is that the default is to play a sound when a 6-socket item drops. I do want to see 6-socket items. I do generally want to pick them up, but I'm not gutted if I miss one. So for that reason, I've removed the sound from these. They still show up, and they still, I haven't shrunk them like I do with some of the other items later, but I just leave them silent. If I see them, great, I'll pick them up. If not, I'm just not that bothered about going back a couple of screens. Now, in currency, Exalted Orbs have a very obvious sound, which I thought would... There it is. Wasn't playing the first couple of times. I must apologise for the coughs, I've got a bit of a cold at the moment. So, Exalted Orbs play, and other items of comparable value play a very noticeable sound. And in this tier, you've got mirrors, Exalted Orbs, mirror shards, which are worth considerably more than an Exalt, Eternal Orbs, which can't drop in normal gameplay and can't drop at all in the Synthesis League, and Albino Row of Feathers, which are just a bit of a meme, but are somewhat valuable. Second tier of currency is Divines, Annulments, Harbinger's Orbs, and Ancient Orbs. Keep an eye on Orbs of Annulment. I keep expecting that they'll wind up getting moved up into the next tier, but for the moment, in the current state of the economy, they don't need to be. Next, we've got the higher sextants, so the items that are in the 3 to 5 chaos range, and then we've got the things that are about 1 chaos orb that come up with a different less intrusive visualization. Finally, we've got the things that are about half a chaos or a bit less. Everything from the Blessed Orb up to the Orb of Scouring. Now, I make one change here. There's a tier that is the lowest tier that's visible, which is silver coins, and I have added Orb of Alteration in there. The reason I've added Orbs of Alteration is that they are used extensively in synthesis crafting, and so you will need a large amount of them. And there's no sound effect for them. They're not an intrusive drop, but they are something that is worth picking up. I'm of the opinion now that Chance and Lower are not worth my time to stop to lose momentum while running through a map to pick up, so I generally don't. One exception, of course, Portal Scrolls and Wisdom Scrolls. You do need these, and what I tend to do to get them is when there's a big loot explosion, so when you finish a synthesized memory fragment in a map, when you finish an Elva incursion, or anything along those lines, or finish a delve, I will hold Alt and I will pick up. So holding Alt in-game overrules your loot filter for a bit and shows everything that's hidden, and then I'll just pick up Wisdom Scrolls and Portal Scrolls at that point. Unique items I've left with... I'll just close that down. Unique items I've left in the way that Neversink has them. I think they're currently a little bit too intrusive and in your face, but I'm just not confident that I know as much as Neversink does about all of the different uniques that do exist in the game. And I'd hate to have a situation where, say for instance, if you were to say, oh, all of the unique leather belts are crap, therefore I don't want to have them show up, but then you clear a Shaper Stronghold and the Headhunter drops and you don't realize it because you've hidden unique leather belts. So for that reason, yeah, I don't touch this and I leave it as fairly intrusive. Divination cards, again, the lowest value ones are hidden, and I'm pretty happy with that setup. It's possible that some of these are better, some of them that are hidden maybe shouldn't be, but I'm happy to trust Neversink on that question. Now, make pretty extensive changes to the synthesis related items. Firstly, Neversink does have this little notion that you can't hide any fractured or synthesized items in game, and that's fine. That's a fairly sensible setup. Protect people from making serious mistakes with their loot filter and the first time they're around. Now, the changes that I've made are basically going and putting the top tier energy shield rares. When those drop, I want to know about it. And I really want to know about it if they're item level 80 or higher. So for that reason, you'll see here Val Regalia, Sorcerer Boots, Sorcerer Gloves, Hubris Circlet, and Titanium Spirit Shield. All of these have the potential to be worth a lot if they drop with the right fractured mods on them. And they also have some potential to sell, even if they drop with utter rubbish fractured mods. If you've not really researched synthesis crafting much, basically what people can do is if they get 3 of the same suffix, so if you get, say, a Val Regalia with 11% fire resistance locked in, another Val Regalia with 42% fire resist locked in, and another Val Regalia with 28% fire resistance locked in, there are various ways that you can use those 3 to have a very good chance of making a truly extraordinary piece of energy shield armor. For that reason, I have modified Neversink's filter to make these specific bases really stand out, and to stand out as much as a Divine Orb, because I feel that's what they're worth. And that's on the basis of them being item level 81 or higher. It's entirely possible that I'm wrong on 80 being the correct level to set that at. That would just require a lot of research. Now, the other, I know that's the test rules there, and finally, item level 86 boots that are fractured will come up as an Exalt. The reason for that is that crafting Onslaught boots requires 3 item level 80. Oh, sorry, requires at least 2 item level 86 boots. And so for that reason, they're extremely, extremely, extremely in demand. There's also plenty of other good uses for item level 86 boots. If they have a locked prefix that is not move speed, they will be worth considerably less, but they still do have their uses. So if you get one of these, you've struck gold. Especially if it's a sorcerer boot, but even if it's just even if it's just something like a Hydroscale boot, that's fine. I haven't touched anything with the synthesized items. As far as I'm aware, there's no mechanic by which synthesized items can drop in the game at the moment. I may be wrong on that, but I believe they're all set up to drop with a fair amount of something sort of stands out a fair bit. I made a couple of small changes to special bases and rules. All the various Atlas exclusive bases, except for Vanguard belts, because Vanguard belts are terrible, I have brought back indivisibility. So by default, Neversink hides two-tone boots, spiked gloves, grip gloves, and fingerless silk gloves. And I'm of the opinion that these have enough potential, especially with the changes to how implicits and lab enchants interact, to warrant them being visible all the time. They don't particularly stand out. They will look like this if they drop in a low tier map, and slightly brighter if they drop in a higher tier map. As always, if they drop item level 84 plus, where they have much more potential to be great, then they stand out even more. The last significant change that I made, the last two significant changes I made, I made it visible when you get an item level 83 plus, item level 83 plus energy shield armor that is a top tier armor. Sorry, 82 plus. I have made these visible. This is something that means that you can just pick these up when you see them, if you're wanting to craft them, and if not, you can just ignore them. I think at the moment there is enough demand for these that people do still want these, especially if you're confident in rolling energy shield gear. Finally, I have brought all of the weak Shaper and Elder items. They appear, but they are hidden. Not hidden, but they're just a small font size. So you'll see this Driftwood wand here, and the heavy belt up above. This is a Shaper heavy belt, something that people will potentially want. And this is a Shaper wand that is not expected really to be desired much at all. This will help a lot if, whilst I don't advocate doing the Chaos recipe, I do advocate considering doing the Exalt Shard recipe, which is where you turn in a complete set of unidentified Shaper items. So that's one for every inventory slot. So that can be a bow, a helmet, a chest piece, boots, gloves, belt, amulet, and 2 rings. If you turn them in unidentified, you will receive 4 Exalt Shards, so 0.2 Exalted Orbs. And this can be a way of making currency out of your lower item level Shaper items. Likewise, you get the same offer is available for Elder items, but you can't mix and match. So the whole set must be Shaper, or the whole set must be Elder, and then you'll receive the 4 Exalted Shards. If they're all identified, or if at least one of them is identified, you'll receive 2 Exalted Shards instead, so 0.1 Exalts, which is still potentially worth your while. One of the key things with this, though, you have to be very careful that you're not turning in valuable rings and amulets for this. Once rings and amulets reach certain item levels, they become worth more than the Exalt Shards are. My general approach here is that if I'm not sure, I stick the Shaper rings and Shaper amulets and Elder rings and Elder amulets. Firstly, I stick them in an in a sale tab for an Exalt for a day. Then I drop them to 100 Chaos for a day, then to 80 Chaos for a day, then 60 Chaos, then 40 Chaos, then 20 Chaos. If they don't sell, and this is unidentified the whole time, if they don't sell during that time, then I'm confident that I can safely use them in the Exalt Shard recipe. And yeah, I made the same change with Elder items as well. I've re-tiered the fossils slightly, but not anything substantial. I have raised Sanctified Fossil into the Exalt tier items, not because they're currently at that point, but they are more valuable than Divine Orbs and Orbs of Annulment at the moment. I've also raised Glyphic Fossils into that tier. These are basically economic predictions rather than based upon current data. I talk to people all the time about how I tend to buy glyphic fossils early in the league and then sell them late. I am doing that again this league, although I've only got a dozen or so of them. They're just something that are staggeringly rare and staggeringly powerful for certain uses. The second tier of fossils should have dense fossils in it, and I've made a mistake there. And I will just fix that now and add that in. Second tier of fossils is the ones that are definitely more than 5 chaos, but that are not of this caliber. So we have gilded fossils, we have dense fossils, and more controversially, we've got tangled fossils. Tangled fossils are currently dirt cheap, but they are so rare that it only takes one person on the server trying to make a niche craft that requires them, and the tangled fossil supply will dry out. Just takes the one person. So if that person exists later in the league, they're likely to be paying not just the 4 chaos that a tangled fossil is now, but they're likely to be paying 15, 20 for them. So for that reason, I generally consider tangled fossils to be in this second tier of fossils. We then have the rest of them, which are just split into 2 tiers, and there's a bit of variance from league to league as to which ones are tier 3 and which ones are tier 4, but I don't think it really matters that much because they're both going to stand out. They're both going to make a Chaos Orb sound, whereas Gilded Fossil tier are going to make a Divine Orb sound, and Hollow Fossil tier is an Exalt. That's the changes that will come from that I've made to Neversink's base Uber Strict filter, and there's this really useful simulation option where you can generate random loot and have a look and see. So here we've got a grip gloves is the only thing that's visible, and it's I believe it's a oh, it's not even a rare. That would normally drop as a rare, I believe, but this doesn't mimic that. Has the generate valuable loot tends to bias things towards better things. So here we've got a Shaper Amulet, Shaper Amber Amulet, item level 86, huge value. Divine Orb, high value. Blessed Orb, Orb of Scouring, Rusted Sulfite Scarab, that should be more. I'm going to go and change those. Did not realise that they were not coming up as Divine Orb tier. I'd just trusted him on I had just trusted him on Scarabs. Not that it matters much because they don't drop in normal gameplay. Not actually sure where Scarabs are located in here now. They'll be under Betrayal, that's it. Scarabs. So tier 1 Scarabs, and currently it's just a Gilded versus Polished versus Rusted. That does not match the economy at all. And I might just try and see if there's a way to make that change. I want to have it so that any Sulfite Scarab comes up as a... That it doesn't. I don't actually see how to do that. In any case, don't trust it on Betrayal Scarabs. Always pick up Scarabs. Even a Rusted Torment Scarab has its value. Pick them all up and check them individually because I don't see a way to make this work. And I'm glad that I found that issue out there. Lastly, Neversink has a couple of options to change text, border colors, background colors, sounds, and it has a few other sort of setting structures that you can use. But lastly, you can actually save your filter either publicly so that other people can use it, or privately. And you'll see here that I tend to assign them a name and a date. So this one will be Sergog Ultra Strict. Oh, sorry, no, it's Ultra Strict. It's Uber Strict, isn't it? Is his exact term? Strict, and then I date stamp it. So today, at least for me, it's the 1st of April. This isn't an April Fool's joke, by the way, although it is actually April Fool's Day time here. And then I'll just save it. This is saved in your browser's cookies, so it's not forever. And then the last step is to download it. And now that'll just appear in your downloads folder. You will then you'll then need to copy it and paste it into your Path of Exile game install folder, which is a reasonably easy procedure. If you're not sure where that is, let me just see if I can what I tend to do is just go into Windows itself, and that's actually not going to come up on the video, unfortunately. But just do a search for star.filter in Windows search, and you'll be able to find it that way. In any case, that's how I've set up my loot filter and why I've made some of the decisions that I have. If you're interested in downloading my filter as it is, you'll be able to do that by following a link that I will post in the video description. Otherwise, have a good one.